Thank you, first of all, Acumen, for having me today. Acumen truly is a really great organization. Jacqueline's not paying me to say this. You invest in bold ideas at critical moments. You have given us as entrepreneurs a language to talk about entrepreneurship, impact, and moral leadership in a totally integrated way. And a lot of investors talk a lot about post-investment support and how much value they bring to a company after they invest. And Acumen is really walking the talk through your fellows program, through leadership development, through capacity building, management training, networks, through the Lean Data Initiative that you've launched recently. You're truly in a class on your own in terms of investors. So before I talk about what we do, I just want to take a moment and recognize the great work that you do as Acumen. Thank you. So in 2010, three of us, two friends and I, quit our jobs, sold our stuff, liquidated our savings account, maxed out our credit cards, and moved to Ethiopia. We were in search of a business opportunity that could create incredible social returns and also a healthy financial return for our investors. Ethiopia was also at an interesting place in its history. It's an ancient and often misunderstood people, known by most of us for some of the worst famines the world has ever seen. But a different story was starting to be told about Ethiopia. It was also an economy of 100 million people. It was also one of the fastest growing economies in the world for 15 years running. And so we arrived in Ethiopia looking for business opportunities. We met with dozens of entrepreneurs, reviewed countless business plans, and then we were introduced to a failing chicken farm in the northern part of the country, in Mekele, Tigray, in the northern region. And I had never actually seen a chicken before in my entire life. I grew up in the suburbs. You know, we were more of a dog and cat kind of household. I like to eat chickens. I saw a lot of chickens in the supermarket, but I'd never actually seen one. And so honestly, I had no idea what to expect going to visit this chicken farm. I was thinking, you know, dilapidated, muddy coops and feathers flying everywhere. And you know, to our amazement, when we arrived, we saw a really impressive facility. These were real assets. There were machines. There was real infrastructure. I said, oh, this might be an opportunity. So of course, as you would, you know, walk around a chicken farm with some stoic government officials, you know, you pretend like you know what you're talking about. You say things like, I think these chickens need a little more space, or I'm pretty sure those chickens are supposed to have feathers on them. And you know, this farm, you know, was built with really good intentions. The farm was built by the regional government, and they recognized that smallholder farmers needed better chickens. A lot of people, when they talk about smallholder farmers, they talk about crops, they talk about seeds, they talk about fertilizer, but livestock is also a really important part of smallholder livelihood. And within livestock, chicken is actually the fastest return, one of the quickest profit returns, and also one of the lowest barriers to entry for smallholders to get involved in. So the government rightly identified a need, that smallholders needed better chickens. But this facility was mired by mismanagement. They, for 15 years, had been trying to run this farm and get it up and running, and they were producing about 10,000 chickens a year for a region of 6 million people. So you do the math, it doesn't really add up. So we submitted a proposal to the regional government, and of course we said that we had all of the financial, managerial, and technical abilities to turn this facility around. And after a few rounds of negotiation, we acquired this farm on a long-term lease, and a roller coaster ensued. Our initial deal was that we just had to produce chickens for up to 40 days, and then the government was going to buy them, and they were going to distribute them to all of their smallholder farmers. Sounds like a great deal, right? Guaranteed government offtake. We just have to take baby chickens, make them 40 days, and they're not our problem anymore. Well, within 2 to 3 months, the government would show up late and sometimes not at all. And so when you're dealing with a living animal, you really have to sell it on time. So our market model fell apart. We struggled to get the right breed of chicken. The source of supply either dried up, the chickens would die on our farm, or they would die in the hands of smallholder farmers. We had 6 near bankruptcies, and there were over a dozen times when we were late on payroll or barely made payroll by $1. In early 2014, Acumen stepped in. They saw a potential business, they saw a vision. They saw that we'd learned our hard lessons, that we'd been grinding for a long time, and we had a vision for how we might be able to turn this thing into a success. and Acumen stepped in with a critical investment that others weren't willing to make at that moment. And the same year, we started to get the product right. We found a breed of chicken from the south of France, which had all of the profile that we were looking for. And it was rustic, it was beautiful, it was a good scavenger, it was a prolific producer, and it was exactly fit with the traditional smallholder production methods and the consumer demand. We also started investing in a market model to make sure these chickens could reach smallholders. We hired veterinarians to run around the country and recruit agents, support them, train them, and get them into the chicken business. The way our business model works is we produce baby chickens. That's essentially our core business. We produce baby chickens, feed, and vaccines. We supply that as a full package to agents spread throughout the country. Those agents raise the chicken for 45 days, give the birds 6 vaccinations, and then supply them to smallholder farmers in their area. Now, these agents are really solving 2 problems for us. One, they take the riskiest portion of a chicken's life out of the hands of smallholders. Those first 6 weeks are absolutely essential in terms of management, medication, feed. And if you send a baby chicken to a smallholder farmer, they're not gonna make it. They're gonna have a lot of problems. And so these agents take the riskiest piece out of the chain. And number 2, they use their local networks and knowledge to actually reach smallholder farmers in their areas. That's something as a single company we'd have a very hard time doing. So they sort of complete the last mile of the distribution. Since Acumen invested in 2014, we're now in 5 farms throughout Ethiopia. We have 2 hatcheries, a central feed mill. We've gone from 100 employees to 1,000 employees. We've gone from 50 agents to over 2,000 in nearly every district. From the little farm in Mekele where they were producing 10,000 chickens a year, we now produce over 10,000 chickens a day, and all for smallholder farmers. This year alone, we'll reach over 2 million rural households in Ethiopia with better chickens. Now, who cares? Why do chickens matter anyways, right? Okay, great. I mean, a lot of vegetarians, vegans in the room, like, yeah. I know Seth was mentioning earlier, why are chickens important? Well, there are 4 reasons. Number 1, this is about productivity. Typical Ethiopian chickens will produce about 60 eggs in a year. Our chickens, under the same management conditions with the same farmer, will produce 240. When it comes to growth, an Ethiopian chicken will reach market weight in about a year, and ours will do that in about 3 months. So that's a 4-fold productivity increase for smallholder farmers, and somebody keeping 5-10 chickens can increase their annual income 20% through a very small investment. This year alone, we'll put over $200 million in the pockets of smallholders that have our chickens. This is not money. The cool thing with the $200 million, that's great. The second important thing about chickens is that money is going to women. Rural women in sub-Saharan Africa are generally restricted to the household. They have a lot of family duties, household chores, so due to socio-cultural reasons, they're in the house. Well, the chickens don't go very far from the house either, and they're usually around the house. And women are looking after them, feeding them, harvesting the eggs, and bringing those products to market. So we know from the development literature that when women are earning more money, that money tends to get spent on health needs of the family, food, education, and really core requirements of rural households. So it's about productivity, it's about women, it's also about food security. 51% of kids in Ethiopia are stunted. Right? They don't grow properly because they don't have enough protein and diet diversity at critical ages when they're growing up. In the northern part of Ethiopia, in the Tigray region, where we've been working the longest, the rate of stunting has dropped over the last 3 years from 51% to 38%, according to a recent government study. And they've given our work in poultry the leading role in that reduction in stunting. And number 4, it's about resilience. Smallholders, as you know, and we work in particularly drought-prone areas, are very subject to drought. When the rain doesn't come, their crops don't grow and they can't feed their families. Well, through livestock and especially through chickens, they have an alternative. So when the rain doesn't come, they can still earn. They can produce eggs, they can produce meat, and they can keep feeding their families. The first time we experienced a drought in Ethiopia, we thought a crisis was coming for us. And we actually saw sales increase when a drought hit. People were selling off larger animals that were hard to keep, and they realized that chicken was actually a way out for them and would increase their ability to adapt to climate change. Our vision is to achieve 1 chicken per person in Ethiopia and across sub-Saharan Africa. We are currently replicating our business model in Rwanda. That's our first sort of pilot outside of Ethiopia. And off the back of that, we expect to enter key new markets in sub-Saharan Africa over the next 5 years. We're looking to be the leaders in sub-Saharan Africa in the traditional poultry sector, and to be the best smallholder-focused poultry company in the world. Put simply, that's what we're trying to achieve. Currently we do over 1 million chickens a month to smallholders, and I can say that we're the only company in Africa that's exclusively focused on smallholders. Acumen asked me to share some lessons learned for other entrepreneurs in the room and maybe investors working in frontier markets and developing countries. Number one, I'd say focus very hard and very focus on getting the product right. Spend time listening to the poor. Make sure you have a product that will fundamentally meet a huge smallholder demand, or a huge demand of the poor at scale. Until you get that product right, we spent about 3.5 years trying to get that product right. Until you get that product right, everything else is just noise. The organizational issues that you're dealing with, the petty dramas of entrepreneurship, everything else is just noise, and get the product right. Number two is purpose. I think a deep sense of purpose is the best employee retention mechanism in the world. If you communicate a clear, concise, compelling purpose as frequently as possible in your organization, you'll be amazed at the loyalty and level of motivation that you get from your people. I think people work for purpose, not just for profit. Number three is patience. In frontier markets like Ethiopia, it's going to take 7 to 10 years to build a business and really build an organization. So, and that's true whether you're going to be building a $3 million company or a $100 million company. So make sure you're in it for 7 to 10 years, and if you're going to put that time and effort in, make sure you're solving a big enough problem where it's really going to be worth it to you and to your investors and to the society that it's going to take 7 to 10 years of your life. 4 is people. I think as entrepreneurs, we try to take everything on our shoulders. We try to do too much, work too long, and oftentimes fall into the genius or brilliant person with a bunch of helpers syndrome. As early as you can, probably earlier than you can afford. Hire great people, give them as much responsibility as they can take, because as soon as you start scaling, if you're behind the ball on people, that's going to really slow you down and hold you back. And then fifth, something I'm super grateful to Acumen for is alignment. I think one of the big questions that early entrepreneurs face is, which investors do I work with? And I've got a lot of offers. You know, who do I go for? And a lot of times we're tempted to chase the high valuation, right? The guys that show up with nice suits and they meet your valuation or even exceed it, and you're so excited by that number that you jump for it. And we chase valuation and we forget about values. Having an investor that's truly aligned with what you're trying to do and your purpose as a company is so much more valuable than whatever valuation an investor is offering you. And also an investor who has the courage to stand behind you and stand with you in a crisis. So when you're looking for investors, focus on values and not only the valuation. So thank you. And thank you to Acumen for having me.